Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, as we all know, we like to save a little money. We get some plants that we really like, and we want some more. And a lot of people don't go and buy more. They actually gather the seed up and, of course, treat it, store it, and start new plants. Not all plants will actually seed themselves and go and come relatively true. So we're talking about isolation. In other words, nothing that will cross-pollinate with it in order to give you non-true plants. This happens a lot in Rudbeckias, Echinaceas, etc. because in my garden they cross-pollinate, some are tall, some are short, some are darker, some are more droopy, if you want to call it that, in the Echinaceas. In snapdragons, I've never planted snapdragons in my garden, but I have snapdragons, and I get them all different colors, and I pull out the colors I don't like, which is usually that rusty orange. So the other colors all prevail throughout the garden, and they'll show up, and they're always in the wrong place. You can either move them, or you can just leave them alone. Or in my case, sometimes I let them bloom, let me see what the color is, and then decide. And most of the time, I just leave them alone. Or if I don't like them, rip them out. So if you're going to be saving seed, then what you can do is you can get a book called The Complete Guide to Saving Seeds. There's 322 vegetables, herbs, flowers, fruit, trees, and shrubs in this book. It is published by Story Publishers and distributed in Canada by Thomas Allen. I like this book, and there's a couple of reasons. First of all, the quality of the paper on the book, on the inside. The pages, it's big. The print is relatively large as well. It makes it easier for old eyes to read. And there are important little notes in each section, and they're highlighted so that you can have a segment of a page highlighted, which means it's important. Make sure that you read that. Now, this book by the authors Robert Goff and Cheryl Moore Goff covers so much, and I do mean that. So if you think you don't know a lot about seeds, or you thought you knew a lot about seeds, this book's going to help you an awful lot, because this book covers the structures of seeds, and so the biology of it, and it's also going to cover things like, if you're growing them plants for seed, spacing that you're going to need to give you the best seed production. Preventing unwanted pollination. Hand pollination. If you want to go and do your own by hand. And special handling for biennials. It's here. So, it's a lot of good, solid information. It also discusses things like air, water, and light. With light being very, very important, a lot of seeds must be covered in order to germinate. Some seeds cannot be covered and must be in the sunlight in order to germinate, just on the surface and kept moist. Other seeds, like the violas, what you call pansies, not only have to be on the soil surface, but they also have to be in the dark. And, of course, in moist conditions. So it's important, and this is all covered. And when you're talking about light, it's been a long time since I've seen a book where it covers the light spectrum, or that portion of the light spectrum that seeds actually are encouraged to germinate with, which happens to be the red and far red, which is red, of course, which is also the heat. Which is why sometimes you'll see in light stands and on light fixtures where you're going to be doing seeding, they actually not only have the long, cool white tube holders, but also the sockets for the little 10-watt hot bulbs that will produce a lot more red light. That's red is heat, right? Ultraviolet will give you sunburn. So it's all covered in here, and it goes into that type of depth. How do you know that the seed that you gathered and how much is enough for you? It's covered. How do you know what seed is going to be viable and what seed's not? It's covered in this book using several different methods. The several different methods of cleaning the seed, because a lot of the seed covers will actually inhibit seed germination. So you do have to clean them off, but you also have to store them, dry them, clean them, and you need certain types of humidity as well as temperature. It's all covered in here, and it's covered in the section so that you can just go and look up a specific plant. So if you wanted to do tomatoes, you look up tomatoes, and it tells you all about why you have to use a hot bath, why you use the fermentation on them as well, and also how and when to harvest, and whether you want to harvest them and squeeze that tomato out, or you're going to let that tomato rot a little bit. It's all sort of covered in the section. And how long is it going to germinate? And how true is it going to be? Etc. So there's a lot of information so completely compact in this book. I really like the book. It was first published in 2011. And remember I said the pages have great feel to them, the quality of the paper? You see the color pictures. Color pictures are accurate to color. And they don't take up huge amounts of space because you want a lot of information to go into it. I like this one. I went and I looked up, I look up tomatoes because I know that people are going to want to do those. I want to make sure that it's done and done well. No problem in this book. But I also like to look up odds and ends and things that I'm curious about. So I went and I looked up yuccas and how to do yuccas, and it's covered. And I think that that's important because how many times have I seen old seed heads basically on the plants hanging around the garden that are supposed to have been cut off that aren't, and all the big seed pods are all hanging down. Well, what do you do with all those? And it's all covered. And it's not difficult with the yucca. I was quite surprised. But I shouldn't have been because, of course, they seed themselves or in the wild, so they can't be that difficult. So you're going to get the common name, the botanical name, the family, the type, the seed viability. Once you've gathered the seed and you look after it correctly, how long is that seed going to be viable for? In the case of tomatoes, it's generally 4 years. And you want, how many do you want, etc. It covers flowering, isolation so that you can get plants that are more true, seed cleaning, and of course, as I said earlier, the hot bath, the seed germination temperatures, moisture levels, as well as the hot bath, and of course, the fermentation. So, when do you transplant them? How much light do they need? It's all covered in each section. So, I want you to understand that this is an extremely good book for someone who wants to go and save seed. The Complete Guide to Saving Seeds, 322 vegetables, herbs, flowers, fruits, trees, shrubs, all in the book by Robert Goff and Cheryl Moore Goff, published by Story Publishers and distributed in Canada by Thomas Allen. An excellent book, one well worth putting into your library. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.